Hello out there, Phoenix, Arizona multimedia artist David Miller here to tell you about a project I've been working on this summer, something near and dear to my heart. And the reason for that is it's about one of my heroes. His name was Phil Ochs. He was a protest singer involved in the folk scene in the early 60s, and he did a little bit of stuff that'd be considered classic rock towards the end of the 60s and early 70s. Phil was a left-wing activist, and when you compare him to his contemporaries, he's often associated with Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan was not as political and obviously more successful. Phil is like the alternate universe of Bob Dylan if he had remained more political and did not become electrified in the early 60s. Phil did some more straight rock and roll stuff towards the end of his career, but Phil had a lot of integrity, and he had a lot of strong beliefs that were kind of the antithesis of what Bob Dylan stood for and became. So I first fell in love with Phil Ochs in early 2000s when I moved to Arizona. I found one of his CDs, I Ain't Marching Anymore, at Mesa Library, and over the years, a lot of people who are influenced by Phil want to pay tribute to him, because not only is he a great example of what an activist artist should be and could accomplish, but he was an incredibly creative guy and had incredibly poignant lyrics that were very poetic. His music was very melodic in kind of an unusual way, and he also is kind of a cautionary tale because the end of his life was filled with depression. He inherited bipolar disorder. He became an alcoholic, and he stopped being able to write music. Ultimately, he took his own life in 1976. But this summer, I have been working on an animated documentary, not something that I'm putting out there for money or any other reason other than I wanted to pay tribute to Phil Ochs, similar to how many other artists in the past have paid tribute to him, like Billy Bragg writing songs about him, or Sean Penn funding documentaries about Phil Ochs' life.
Well, what happened? What happened to all the promise of the beautiful, exciting aesthetic that was happening in 1965?
So at this point, I'd moved to New York City. I was living in the Village, living near the corner of Bleecker and McDougal, and this song came out one night. I'll do the first and last verse. Oh, I marched to the Battle of New Orleans at the end of the early British War. The young land started growing, the young blood started flowing, but I ain't marching anymore.
So I made this documentary mostly with Adobe Character Animator, the motion capture animation software that I am a super strong advocate for. I designed my various Phil characters in Adobe Illustrator, and then I utilized a lot of public domain interview footage that I found on YouTube and publicdomainarchive.org site. And I sort of compiled a story that's bookended by Phil kind of at his lowest, when he had this alter ego, John Train, who was a hard-drinking, naughty guy compared to Phil's sort of cleaner, kinder image. I think at that point in his life, Phil had decided that being Phil Ochs wasn't paying off. He had actually been assaulted in Africa and jailed in South America, and he saw a lot of the left-wing movements that he was part of kind of fall apart in the face of the Nixon presidency. So Phil was really at his lowest, and I utilized some audio as the beginning of the film and the end of the film, and then the middle section of the film is all about the backstory to Phil's artistic and creative growth. Show me a prison man whose face is grown dead, and I'll show you, young man, with many reasons why. There but for fortune may go you or I.
Is it rolling? All right, brief recap. We begin with the sad tale of the death of Phil Ochs in the Chelsea Hotel, room 714, approximately 4 nights ago. And what's today's date about? I don't know, June 27th. So June 20, on the first day of summer, in 1975, Phil Ochs was murdered in the Chelsea Hotel room 714 by Lute Train.
The reason why I'm doing this documentary in 2018 is I see a correlation between Phil's belief system and sort of the despair and despondency he felt towards the end of his life, and what a lot of citizens who are concerned but powerless and also creative feel right now. If you are a creative person and you're concerned about something, what can you do about it? And will anything you make bring about any sort of positive change? And, you know, I'm just a lowly indie artist making stuff out of my house. So I can imagine that somebody who's had a larger platform, like, to name a bunch of left-wing artists, Phil Ochs or U2 or Peter Gabriel or Midnight Oil, you know, when you create things and you advocate for some sort of change or some sort of positive social progression, and you have these enormous setbacks, you know, how does it affect your life? Of course, I think that 24-hour news channels succeed when they keep their audiences hooked in this mix of negative energy. But I think it is not a way for us to live our lives, no matter how concerned we are about something we see in society that is going wrong. We shouldn't let that drag us down. We need to do something about it, or we need to change our thought process, because I think the only other way to take it is to go down this road of madness and poor interactions with your families. People don't take care of themselves. They don't create good art when they are existing in the space of pure negativity, pure despair. So that's kind of the theme I had for this particular Phil Ochs project. Once I had the dialogue in place, I chose some songs that I had acoustic snippets for that were just recorded around people's houses or on public domain radio programs, and I cut them down to roughly a minute or less just to give you an idea of what his music was like.
Here is a land full of power and glory, beauty that words cannot recall. All her power shall rest on the strength of her freedom, and her glory shall rest on us all.
I hope that if you're an animation fan or a documentary fan and you have no idea who Phil Ochs is, that this is something you could watch and get a sense of his life story, and also kind of take away the themes that I'm trying to put forth about living a creative, concerned life, but not letting what happens in society overwhelm you to the point of madness and depression. But if I'm the only one who ever sees this thing, if I'm the only one who ever appreciates it, you know, then in the words of mighty Phil Ochs, that's the way it's gonna be. Thanks for watching. Talk to you next time.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more creative tutorials, gear reviews and video art. Also check out our Patreon for weekly bonus videos and model photography sets.